Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. This is Kieran Murray coming to you from the car again with my buddy Brian Harding.
Howdy.
And I know we're a little bit about a half hour later than usual, but Brian had a conference call this morning, so now we're ready to rock and roll. We're pulling out of the casino. We're gonna head over to Classy Chassis, get a little car wash, talk about some networking. So let's start with this. Tell us who you are, Mr. Brian Lance Harding. What business you have?
I'm Brian Lance Harding, and I have the plumbing and drain company along with my two partners, Eric and Randy, and we're a service plumbing and drain cleaning company.
And how long have you been in business?
7 years next month.
7 years next month. And how did, by the way, so in case you've never watched one of these episodes before, we go for a little car ride. I'm going to ask Brian some questions. He doesn't know what those questions are. I kind of have an idea what the questions are. He doesn't know what the answers will be because he doesn't know what the questions are going to be. So we're just going to flow with it, and I'm going to pick his brain on networking, specifically at Ignite You. So take us back a few years. How did you and I meet?
We met Mark Mattingly's wife, Sean Mattingly. I knew her from a couple different things, and she said, hey, you really need to meet this guy, Kieran. And at the chili cook-off for Lakewood Chamber, she walked me up and said, you guys need to meet each other and turn on the left. And she went back to doing whatever she was doing.
And then we had to talk.
And then we stood there and stared at each other and said, okay, well, here we are.
Well, now what do we do?
Now what do we do, exactly.
So what you're saying then is this is Sean Mattingly's fault.
Yeah, the whole thing is her fault. There's no question.
So that was 5 years ago in February. And I always tell people that ever since then, Brian and I have formed a pretty good friendship. And Brian actually met his wife at one of our events. She was a realtor that sold him the house. And then I guess
never left.
Stayed with it. Yeah. Full service realtor there, not bad. And then we vacationed together. We just got back. We spent, the four of us spent a week in Key West. So in all seriousness, I'd have to say thank you, Sean Mattingly, for making that happen, because that's turned out pretty good for me anyways.
Yeah, it's been pretty good.
So let's talk about your networking. So I met you that number of years ago. Had you done, when you started networking with us, had you done any networking before that? Had you belonged to any different groups, or did you just start off in your networking path?
So I met Sean at a B&I type group. We were a year and a half or 2 years into our adventure, and one of our plumbers came back to our office and said, hey, I met a realtor that is part of this group, and they want us to come meet him, and it's a networking group, and I didn't really know what they meant by that. But we were really excited because we thought it was like this big, huge honor to be invited to a B&I type group. And we're like, oh man, so the plumber went and I went, and we went there and we ended up joining that group because we really didn't know what it was and what it was all about. But it seemed like a good way to get our name out there. We were struggling with advertising and some other stuff, and so it was a good way to we thought it was a good way to get our name out there. So we joined that. And then I met Sean, and she suggested we do some more networking because we were doing pretty well with the B&I type group we were in. So then we joined the Lakewood Chamber of Commerce, and then like a month later, maybe less, is when she introduced us. So really not much. I mean, many years ago for Brand X Plumbing, Eric and I went to a Kent Chamber of Commerce meeting a couple times. But that was not a super pleasant experience, so that's pretty much my experience before Ignite You.
And probably at this point, for the benefit of Eric Stiles, your partner, we ought to just mention just real quickly that you guys had massive success with SEO.
Yeah,
that's for you, Eric.
Yeah, Eric's
massive success.
Eric's a huge fan of SEO. And the funny part about when you and I met, we scheduled a meeting for the following Tuesday or Thursday or something like that. And I in my mind, you were coming to sell me advertising because when we met at the chili cook-off, you'd spend a fair amount of time of our conversation talking about your website and all the SEO benefits of that and stuff like that. And so really, I thought the meeting was going to be about marketing, and so I really made the meeting just to not make Sean look bad, and I really had no intention of buying anything.
That's funnier than crap, man.
Yeah.
He took the meeting so that Sean wouldn't look bad. He took it so that just to make sure. Okay, so I'm going to jump ahead on this one then. So you took this meeting just to make Sean not look bad. And so I want to talk to you about the results you've had with Ignite U. I know you belong to a lot of different things, but I want to talk specifically about the results you've had with Ignite U. Now, the one thing I know, and I've titled this, the one thing I know that early on, you made one connection. It was a lady had come to our group, I think it was only like 3 times. You happened to see her on one of those 3 times, who gave you a connection to a property manager that you ended up, there was the plumber for the property management company was retiring,
right, and
you were able to step right in. Over the course of the last 5 years, that one referral has generated $291,000, and actually that number is a little bit higher because this was a month ago when you gave
well,
the number.
it was 219,000, and so yeah, it's certainly higher now. It's probably closer to 230 or so now. So still over 5 years, that's that's not bad.
I don't think that's the right number. So
that's the number I sent you.
I don't think so. We're gonna look at that number to make sure.
I'll double check here.
If it is, then I got to retitle this. But I about ran over that guy in the car. So let's say let's call it somewhere over 200,000. So had number one, had Sean Mattingly not introduced us, and number 2, had you not
taken the meeting out of respect for Sean,
yeah, that would have been done. That would have been gone,
right?
Because you definitely would have missed one of those meetings that other lady was at,
right?
So tell me about your other networking then with Ignite U. What's happened over the last 5 years?
So I'll check that number later on. I don't want to take up our time on the video doing that, but we get to be honest with you, we changed software so many times over the last 5 years that it's nearly impossible for us to give it like a total number. And even now, we've got a software we've been working with for a while. And we're still working the bugs out of it. And still, for us to track down every lead that comes from Ignite U is tough, because generally when people call us, it's an emergency type situation or something where they're not really thinking about how they found us and stuff like that. So we always ask everybody, how'd you hear about us? And sometimes I'll say, I heard about you from my friend John Smith, and we don't have a mechanism for tracking down John Smith as an Ignite U member or a different whatever. So those we just categorize as referral. But based on the shout outs we get, on a weekly or monthly basis, I would estimate we probably, and just from people calling me and asking questions and things like that, I would estimate we do probably 6 to 8 jobs a month for Ignite U members and their friends and business associates and stuff. Our average ticket's around $550 or something like that. So if I just did this easy math for $550 average ticket across the board, times 6 or 8 or whatever, that's $3,000-4,000 a month plus the big customer we do know about, and they're doing $4,000 a month. So I would say on good months we're probably up around that $10,000 a month number, and on slower months we're probably around 6 or 8, maybe somewhere in there. But I don't have a mechanism to track as well as like Kevin and Jim and those guys have.
So you've obviously done extremely well.
Yeah.
Tell me, what do you attribute it to? So I know you're a busy guy, you got a lot of stuff going on, but what all compiles into that whole thing of being able to make those kind of numbers? What do you do to make that happen?
Well, it's been, I've watched every one of these videos so far, and everybody's pretty much said the rule number 1, which is rule number 1, and it's important to mention again. If you don't show up, nothing else really matters. So the first thing is you got to be there. And I remember when I joined, Kendrick used to make a big deal about I only miss this thing when I'm out of town, and there's other folks that still say that that kind of stuff, and I just kind of adopted that as being my way of doing it. So I do Fridays. If I'm in town, I'm there on Fridays. I think I missed maybe 2 over 5 years where I was in town and something else, just really an emergency came up and I couldn't go. I tried doing Tuesdays for a while and it didn't really work my schedule, and so Tuesdays haven't been so good, but Fridays are it's just carved out. Everybody in my office knows I'm not going to be available till I get to the office at 9:30 or whatever, and that's just the way it is. We've just built our schedule around that, so it's not really an optional kind of a thing.
And so your number 1 is showing up. Then what do you do when you show up? Do you have any special sauce, special tricks, anything you say special that people go, he's our guy. What do you do once you're there?
Well, it's morphed over the years. When I was first there, my goal was to obviously meet everybody, and it was kind of a frankly speaking, kind of a selfish approach of just I want to meet as many people as possible and get my name out there and get the company's name out there and things like that. But over the years, it's kind of morphed, and so now I have a couple of different roles, which are not so much about me meeting new people, which is still important, but now I look for people who are sitting down or standing in the corner, and I just grab them and say, hey, what do you do? And I try to find people who that they would make a good connection with, and I do that. The other thing is, over the course of the last 3 years especially, I listen more than I talk now a whole lot, because people know me. I've been around for 5 years. I don't have to keep telling, and it's not like we're doing something new and innovative every month where I got a whole bunch of new stuff to say. We're plumbers. We do plumbing. But it's been a great avenue for us to find suppliers. So, we can name just about any supplier we have that's not a plumbing supply company, and they're going to have a Ignite You connection of some sort. It's just been a fantastic tool for us to find people that we can vet without having to pay to vet them.
How are you?
And be able to kind of get to know their personality, see if they're going to be a good fit for our company. And this is one of the things what's showing up that I wanted to make a point and say is there's been a number of times, one specifically 2 months ago, where I met a person at Ignite You. They had a product I thought I was really interested in, and they gave me a proposal for this product. They emailed me, they called and followed up, they emailed, followed up, and they were really good about their wanting to make the transaction. But what I did is, I've done this several times, and it may or may not be fair, I don't know, but I don't have time to invest meetings and things like that to vet people. So I just hung around. I said, okay, let's just see if this guy keeps coming to Ignite You for a few months.
That was your vetting process.
It was my vetting process, and it was free vetting process, and it didn't cost me any time, and it didn't cost me any money. And because I'm a believer that people, they operate in patterns. So if you're the kind of person that habitually goes to meetings, then I believe that you're going to be a consistent kind of person. If you're not, then I don't really want to do business with people who sign up for something for a transaction, and then boom, you can't ever hear from them again. We call them poof fairies, that.
Yep.
And so this person likely missed out on I would say a pretty good size sale, because they just quit coming, and it just felt to me like it was a very transactional thing, and I didn't dig that.
So that's your way of measuring someone's commitment level. You actually use that as a vetting process. So
it's a way. It's not the way, but it's
a way. Yeah. So especially so, like in that particular networking group, obviously, if it's someone who gave you the proposal and they're not part of Ignite You, that doesn't work because they're not showing up. But
I have other tools in, but I do, yeah.
But it's an easy way to see if they're not even committed enough to show up to the meetings and do their stuff. That's we call it, how you do anything is how you do everything.
Right.
So if they're not going to show up at the meetings and do that consistently and be committed to that,
and I don't mean that they came 7 meetings out of 10. I wouldn't hold that against anybody. People have things to do, but this person gave me this proposal. They came to one meeting afterwards, asked me if I'd seen the proposal, asked me what I thought. I said I'll get back to you later, and I haven't seen them since. So,
really?
Yeah. So that certainly lowered their batting average with me anyway.
And how long has that been?
Probably 6 weeks, 8 weeks.
Wow. So here, that's a nugget number one there. By the way, we're in the Classy Chassis Car Wash. You're going to hear us in a second. There's going to be some things banging overhead, so we'll stop talking when we get to that point. But I think you can still hear us now. So nugget number one is the reason why you want to show up is that people are actually watching for you. And we actually talk about this in our boot camp. People are watching to see how committed you are. Do you just show up for the transaction, or do you show up so that you can learn about other people's businesses, so you can give them referrals? And if you're not there, you can't do any of that stuff. So I love that nugget number one is there's more than one reason to show up. It's for getting the business, and in this case, you didn't get the business because they didn't show back up. They weren't consistent in that. And I love that, and it goes back to when we go back into boot camp again in a couple weeks. We're going to use that story again, so I'm glad that one came up.
I'm going to play the car wash song over here.
Oh, playing the car wash song. So he's going to play them with tongue. We're going to hear this thing going overhead now. By the way, we're a Classy Chassis Car Wash, another Ignite You member. I didn't have the noise like before. I think I missed something. And I would give working at the car wash. I'd give Brian a free coupon for a car wash, but I know he just happened to get the unlimited package over here.
I did. I did. Based on watching these videos, I came and got the unlimited package.
So Amber Foley, if you're up there, I'm waving to you. Woo! Brian Harding at the Plumbing Drain Company got the unlimited package for his Ford Explorer Platinum Edition. So I'm going to save that coupon for somebody else. Get ready to pull out here. And we're off. All right, so let's get back to what's going on in the room. I love that first nugget. You got to be consistent. You're showing up for multiple reasons. What's next?
So again, like I said, now I'm not so much trying to get my name out there as just trying to help other people who maybe new or not really sure what to do. I remember when we started networking, we really didn't have a clue what we were doing. And so if I see people that are kind of lost or whatever, I'll try to help them along or meet folks that they need to. And or sometimes you'll come grab somebody or somebody else come grab somebody and say, hey, can you show this person around or whatever? And I ask them, well, what do you do? And if they say they do, whatever they do, I try to find industries where that would make sense for them to meet. So last Friday there was a guy there. He did what did he do? He did gutters or something like that. Oh no, it's the appliance guy. And so he was looking to meet realtors, and I said, okay, well, let's meet some realtors. And here's some other folks who, property managers and things like that, who would have a need for appliance people or know people who have a need for that kind of thing. And so now, again, my role is not so much, me making a big deal about making sure people know who I am. It's more just introducing other folks to each other.
So do you think it's the longer that you're around and the more consistent you are, that you move from being a networker to a more of a resource?
Yeah, I would definitely say so. And I remember when, going back to Sean again, I remember when I first met her in that BNI type group, I was really impressed that she was like a walking Rolodex. And I could just say, hey, I need somebody who does this. Do you know anybody? And she'd say, okay, here's 4 names. And over the last several years, I've become that resource where people call me and ask me for, hey, who do you know that does this or whatever. And that has its own reward in a salesy / selfish kind of way, where people are calling me for things that aren't related to plumbing, and that always generally ends up in some conversation about, oh, hey, well, I got you on the phone. What do you guys take care of this or whatever? And so even though it's an unselfish thing, I still get some benefit because we're all here to make money. We're all here to make sales and things like that. So there's an indirect benefit I get from now being more of a resource than a salesman.
So you think you actually are able to get more money coming in because you are the resource? Because you have a different type of relationship with people, right?
Right. So one of the things is if people, for me, I can only speak for myself, but people call me and say, hey, who do you know that does this? And I can say, hey, here's 3 people I know. I now have a lot more credibility than just being the plumber that they deal with. Your game just elevated. Yeah. So and so it secures those relationships I have inside and outside the group. It secures them in a tighter way. And again, as you know, people don't fire their friends. So if you become a different level of supplier with somebody where you're not just the guy they call for this or the gal they call for that, you're the person they trust to call on when they have a need outside of your scope. It's just an entirely different relationship. So,
and I'm going to venture to say you can't get to that point where you're a resource unless you are attending consistently and you're meeting all those people. So, so I'm going to call that nugget number 2, is that you can actually do more for your company, better for your company, when you are a resource instead of just someone there working on a transactional basis, who was kind of like the one who gave Brian the bid and then never showed up again. Brian is there for the last 5 years every week unless he's traveling on vacation or something, maybe at a trade show or a seminar around the country, but has become a resource. So yeah, nugget number 2 right there, become a resource, and you can't become that resource. And one of the things we talk about in boot camp is to get into momentum, and you can't get into momentum unless you are attending regularly. And you can't become a resource. And I'm going to say probably if you can get to that point where you're in momentum, you're probably pretty close to being a resource or one or the other. But
it doesn't take long with 120 people in the room every week. It doesn't take long to fill your Rolodex pretty quickly.
I love that. Become a resource. What's next? I love this stuff.
The next thing, I have two other things I would recommend for folks that maybe don't know anything about networking, or maybe been doing it for a while and think they know what they're doing, but don't come in. I would recommend to people, don't come in trying to sell something per se. So, for me, I've been networking now for 5.5 years, whatever it is, 5 years at least, but I've never ever come into a networking group of any sort and said, "Hey, I have this product here. You should really go buy it." And that's benefited. I think that's really worked well for us. We've been in this for a long time, but we've never come in with the idea of walking out with a sale. Now, I know in our world that would be kind of hard to do, but I think that's a universal thing, though. If for instance, when we hand around the cards at the table in the mornings or the afternoons or whatever, and I get an email from somebody I sat at the table with, 7 hours later, that now I'm on their email group. That's not so fun for me. That's not, and a lot of those things are generated at 2:00 in the morning, and I'm on call, and my phone rings, and it's somebody emailing me, "Hey, they have a 17% off sale on this month's
on the widget
product of the month." Yeah, those things are not very fun for me. So I ultimately ignore all those things. So that's one thing. Is the transactional thing. If you're looking for an immediate transaction, you've really got to shift gears and figure out a different way to get your product and name out there. I just don't believe that that's an effective. It may be effective short term, but it is not effective for what the benefit for us in networking has been. The long game, the marathon.
Yeah.
The sprint. We've never done the sprint, so I couldn't tell you if it would work for us or not. But just for us, I can tell you that if we would have tried the sprint method, I just don't think it would have worked. Now again, our industry is different than many. People don't decide they want to buy a water heater. They do it because they have to. That's different than other products.
So let me go back to something you just said. So we use the example of getting the email in the middle of the night, but there's other instances where they're trying to make a sale and it's not the email. It's
right.
Maybe they do something at the table. Maybe you go do a one-on-one and they pull out the flip chart, right?
Right. Oh, yeah. That was one of my favorites.
You love those, right? Yeah. You don't even do those anymore.
Yeah. I think I said 7 words about my business that whole one-on-one.
So you said something I think you said you, was it that you ignore them or you block them? What do you do?
Well, generally I just unsubscribe.
So if it's an email, you unsubscribe. Mm-hmm. But if it's someone who's trying to sell you something, I know that there's a mental process for you. It's basically that you check out and just, it's that relationship is kind of not going to go where it needs to go anymore. I'm trying to find the right words for it. And maybe for me, let me speak for me. If someone tries to sell me something in a networking relationship, in my brain, I'm just done with you. I'm cutting you off. I'm not cutting you off and saying stop talking. Right. I'm just saying, the next time we're even around each other, I'm probably not even listening to you because.
Well, here's my thoughts on that. So if I go to a meeting of any sort, let's say I just bump into somebody at lunch or whatever, and we're a networking meeting or whatever, and somebody begins trying to sell me something, that sends an immediate signal to the listener in this process that this is about the speaker. This whole interaction, this whole transaction is not about the person listening, it's about the person speaking. And that's a very dangerous road to go down if you're in sales of any sort. The listener needs to think that this is about them because people's favorite topic is them. It's not you and it's not your widget that's 17% off this month. So I would caution anybody in any sales role to be careful about that. When you come across as, hey, you should buy this because of this, unless you've asked a bunch of questions and you know that they have a particular problem or need that you can fill or satisfy, it's very clear that this is about the speaker and about the salesperson, and people in general don't like that. So they're whether they're as blunt or candid as I am today about it or not, but they're going to turn you off.
Right.
It's just the way people are wired.
So that nugget number 3: don't go into a networking event. Try to be the salesperson. Don't be number 1. I hate it. I'm like you. I hate it when all of a sudden you're added onto someone's email list. They didn't give you an opportunity to say yes or no. All of a sudden you're just on it, and then there's no way to unsubscribe. Right. That's the worst one, right? Yeah. And you got to block somebody on your email thing or whatever. But nugget number 3: don't be that pitchy salesperson. Be the person that goes and builds relationships and does, like he was saying, the marathon. It's the long haul. It's not that short-term sprint. So you had another one coming up. What was that one?
The last one, and I've talked about this in classes I've taught and things like this before. When you're sitting down to do your 3-minute spiel or your 30-second or 10-minute. It doesn't matter where the setting is, but specifically to Ignite You, you get your 3-minute deal. It's not beneficial for the listeners. Let's say I'm a plumber, just hypothetically, and I come in.
What a stretch!
Yeah, I'll see if I can put my plumber hat on for a minute. And I walk in, and I spend 3 minutes talking about. We work on water heaters, and we work on kitchen faucets, and we work on shower valves, and we work on this, and we do sewers, and we do cameras, and we do water lines, and we do, I spend all this time talking about all the things we do. Okay, that's great. I've educated this person on our scope of work. I've done nothing to educate the listeners on who we are as a company, how we might be a good fit for them. So I always tell people when they're new to networking, spend 30 seconds talking about what you do, and 2.5 minutes talking about how you do it better than your competition or different than your competition. So for us, that's really easy because contractors, including plumbers, are historically bad at things like making phone calls when they're supposed to or getting bids done on time and things like that. And that's all the stuff our company focuses on because we recognize that tradespeople are bad at that. So people get an understanding of what we are as an organization, not the technical things that we do. And I think people shoot them in the foot. They shoot themselves in the foot 75-80% of the time by spending 3 minutes talking about their thing and their widget and what they do, and you don't get a flavor for who they are as an organization, and you don't understand if they understand. You don't know if they understand what the pain points are for the consumer. So again, for us, we know that when contractors don't show up on time, they don't call. It's a giant pain in everybody's side, and they hate it. And so that's something we work on. So that's something I talk about. Hey, we train this stuff. We know that it's annoying when Comcast is supposed to come out or whoever, and they don't come out on time, they don't call. We know that that's a thing that makes people unhappy, and we work on it, and here's how we do it. And those things, in my mind, are infinitely more important than the task you do. Now, certainly people need to know what you do, so that's what I'm saying. Spend 30 seconds, or maybe even a minute if you need to, explaining your widget or your service or whatever. But don't make that the entire 3 minutes, because people don't, after a certain point, they get it, and then they don't care anymore. Okay, I get that you sell widgets.
So do you think they tune you out at that point?
I think that yeah, I do. I do think they tune you out. I don't think they do it in a obvious kind of way. I think they just begin, their mind starts to wander.
I think we have short attention span.
Yeah, and if you're not engaging in things that they care about, their minds are going to wander. So they may not get on their phone and start playing a video game or something like that, but they're just not going to be intently listening. Where if you're talking about things that you can say, we know in our industry consumers have felt this pain, and here's what we do to fix it, they will lean in and listen. And you can read their body language. You can see how things are going around just by reading body language. We could spend an hour talking about that. But that would be the thing. Whenever I talk to people who I know are going to come to something like this, and specifically Ignite You, when they're going to come out and they ask me what it's all about, I always kind of give them this rundown and say, people care a little bit about what you do. They mostly care about who you are. And it sounds corny, and it goes back to 1942 or 44. I think Dale Carnegie's book probably was one of the first ones. People do business with who they know, like, and trust. Notice the top 3 things was not what you do. it's all about relationships, and people say that they understand that, and they say that they know that, and they probably do believe that. But then when they do their commercial, they omit the relationship part, and they talk about what they do. That's not the relationship part. The relationship part is where you need to focus your time when you're doing your 3 minutes.
And I think the big thing is they want to do that know, like, and trust, but they think they can accomplish all that in about 40 seconds.
Right.
And all of a sudden we're there. And what they don't realize is it's a process. It takes that time period.
So even if you're in an industry where you couldn't explain what you do, which, for me, again, it's easy. So maybe this is all harder for other folks than me. I couldn't explain everything we do in 30 seconds, but people can get the nuts and bolts of what we do pretty quickly. If people are in an industry where it is just too cumbersome to explain in 30 seconds what they do, that's okay, because if you're coming every week, you can tackle a different piece of it, and people will begin to fill in the pieces of the technical stuff. But I just don't believe that you're going to sell people on your technical acumen, and they're going to choose you because that we don't have the best trucks in town, we don't have the best pipe wrenches in town. We have fantastic people, and we have fantastic processes to make sure we address things that we know customers in our industry generally have had unpleasant experiences with. I couldn't walk in and say that our kitchen sink drain cleaning machine is better than brand X's. It just doesn't work that way. So stop spending your time talking about how great you are at your thing, and talk about how great you are as a company and as a person and an organization and that kind of stuff.
I know that that you had told me one time that you weren't plumbing company, you were a customer service company,
Right.
who just happened to specialize in plumbing. Is
Right,
that right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so I think that's a big thing, is when people start working with you guys, is that it's a completely different experience than working with other people, and it is just that it's being able to build those relationships. And I think about just even like you and I over the last 5 years, and building those relationships. And I think I don't know how common that is in a lot of cases. You see a lot of people who come into a networking group that, and I always talk about it, they don't have that stick-to-itiveness and the wherewithal to be able to be here a year from now. In a lot of cases, it's even 3 months from now,
Right.
because you can tell them, they come in and they do the things that you're talking about. They'll do the salesy pitch stuff. They'll do that stuff, and you're like, wow, they're going to get burnt out, that they're not getting the results they want, and then you're not going to see them again. And then at some point, they're going to drop out. They're going to say, yeah, that networking thing doesn't work.
Yeah, I tell people anytime they're coming to a networking thing of any sort, and especially Ignite You, with 120 people in the room, this is a long game. Don't expect anything for 90 days, at least 90 days. And for many people, I tell them, 6 months is a minimum commitment, because there's just so many people to meet, and you've only got 3 minutes in your thing to get your word out, and you can only talk to so many people before the meeting starts. So I try to prep them for that as much as possible up front, because many of them have sales managers or whoever they have to report to, or a boss of some sort. They have to go back and say, hey, how are things going? And this is a long game. It's a marathon. It's not a sprint. So for anybody who comes in and they're just looking, they hit it for 6 weeks real hard, and they try to get as many cards out as they can to get on their email list, they're completely missing the boat. They might as well have saved their money, not even shown up to begin with, because they just don't get it. So I hope to catch people like that when they're new, and kind of let them know what the game is, and not let them set themselves up for failure like that. Because it's unfortunate that when those people burn out because they don't get a transaction the first 2 weeks, that the group suffers because of that.
And I like to catch them and get them in a boot camp, so we can talk about the same thing. So you're catching them in the room to try to mentor them a little bit, and I'm trying to catch them to get them in a boot camp and mentor them a little bit. So I'm going to ask you for some advice for 2 different groups of people, and then we're going to wrap it up because we're back at the casino. So number one, we have people from Ignite You that are watching, and they'll be watching when we put it back in the group and stuff. Number one thing. So you got a list of things to be able to be successful with this networking thing. Number one thing. What do they do? What do you tell them to do? Number one thing to be effective in networking, by far, nothing else matters. Number one, what is it?
Nothing else matters if you don't show up. So if you don't show up, nothing else really matters. Yeah.
So we could go through and talk about all these techniques and all that cool stuff, all those nuggets when I went 1, 2, and 3. None of those make any difference if you don't show up.
Right.
And that's one thing that people need to hear that over and over and over. If you're not going to show up, you're just wasting your time. Number 2 question is, we'll put this video out onto YouTube, and so people outside of Ignite You will end up seeing it as well. So talk to someone who, and it doesn't matter to me what kind of business they have, because I'm a firm believer that networking works for any business. I think it's just a good idea as a business professional to spend time with business professionals in a business professional setting. And without even the thought of, I'm here to get business, although we all are, right? Mm-hmm. But you never know what else is going to happen when you're networking with business professionals. It might be that you find your next business partner. It might be that there's just a myriad of things. You might find your next best friend.
Right.
And I think...
or wife.
Yeah, exactly right. So tell those people who are watching, regardless of whatever business they're in, what are your thoughts for them on if they should come check out Ignite You? What kind of recommendation?
Well, of course,
do you give?
everybody's always going to say that I want to go somewhere where I can make money. So we've established that can happen. I mean, I would say for people who don't go to networking, how many times do you see a plumber in a networking group?
Rare.
Pretty rare. Okay, so here's a plumber who didn't know anything about networking. Actually, I'm not really a plumber, but here's a guy in a plumbing company who didn't know anything about networking. Comes consistently 1 time a week. I invest 2.5 hours, whatever it is, and my small monthly fee, and I've gotten let's say $100,000 a year in revenue from that. Okay, so that's the instant thing everybody else is looking for. Beyond that, I would say, where else can you go for a 3-hour a week commitment if you want, or less if you don't, or whatever, and a $49 a month fee to go immerse yourself in a room full of 120 people who are generally either entrepreneurs or salespeople, and just by osmosis, you just pick up knowledge. I can't tell you how many times I over the years, less and less the last couple of years, but certainly 5 years ago, 4 years ago, 3 years ago, where I call somebody and say, hey, I don't know how to deal with this. What have you done? Or, hey, can I buy you lunch? And I got something I think you can help me with. Or I hear somebody talking about something in a conversation or their 3-minute thing. And I go, man, I really need to learn about that. And there's been tons of things that have saved me tremendous liability, saved me money, taught me things in HR and legal and all the things that every entrepreneur and every business person says they don't have enough education in. There's a huge benefit of showing up here at Ignite You and just being surrounded by people who are full of that knowledge. And the other thing is, you've got people here who are hungry. I don't see very many people here who are just kind of lackadaisical about getting through the day. It's just a good vibe to be around, and it's good to be immersed in people who are out there looking to go get it. And again, I don't mean that you're trying to make a sale and you're trying to convince somebody across the table from you to buy your widget for $17 today because it'll be $21 tomorrow. I'm just saying that just people here generally are people who are excited about life, they're excited about their business, they're excited about success, and why the hell wouldn't you want to be around that?
Yeah, and what I really picked up when you were saying that is that if you're treating this right, and you're talking about what Brian was talking about, immersing yourself in all this knowledge, for our membership fee is $49 a month. Where are you going to go for $49 a month and essentially have access to your own advisory group?
Right.
You can pick up a phone and call multiple people, and I'm seeing people actually show up for the meeting now who have businesses. I'm just seeing Jim and Karen Margin pull in, and they've got a liquid transmission and down the street, and I see Stephanie Prosser pulled in, who has a construction company, and I'm seeing all these people pulling in. That and there's Mark Coleman from Copyrights, that anytime anyone can pick up the phone and call each other, and just like Brian said, hey, I don't know what to do with this. It's not like, hey, I need to order my printing. It's, I don't know what to do with this situation. Can you help me out? Because you've been in business for 26 years and I need some expertise. And yeah, I think you hit it right on the head. And I think that is the real value of networking, is you don't know where it's going to lead. I think the cool bonus product is you can make some great money and all this stuff, but there's so much more to it. I think you just hit it. You can create your own advisory group and people that you can call on anytime you need to.
And again, 4 or 5 years ago, 3 years ago, I used to make those calls all the time. I can't tell you how many times I'd take someone out to lunch and just say, hey, can I pick your brain on this thing for a minute? And now over the last couple of years, now I'm the one getting the phone calls.
Yeah, now you're that guy.
And I've helped some people through some pretty gnarly situations. There was a couple that were like pretty severe, and I was happy. And if you've experienced them or you've been through that kind of stuff, it was easy to tell somebody the pitfalls to avoid and things like that. Right. I certainly wasn't giving legal advice and things like that, but it's a good thing. If you're able to be that kind of a resource and you're willing to do it, which I am, I'm always willing to help people out. If they ever have a question, I've never ever said no to somebody making a request like that. It's it's kind of our duty to give back to that kind of stuff.
Right on. I love it. Well, folks, we are back here at the casino. We've been out for like 40 minutes. This might be the longest one we've done. And he said something else. So he was talking about body language, reading body language in our room. And I think I'm going to get Brian back in the car maybe in a few weeks. I got to check his schedule because I actually want to have that conversation. I want to talk more about body language. I know he's got some other stuff. So let's call this part 1 with Brian Harding. And we're going to have part 2 hopefully within the next month, because I want you to hear more about the body language thing. If you haven't had a chance to get in here, I know we've got members who haven't met Brian. Oh, matter of fact, you know what we didn't even talk about was the cool contest that you have going on that you came out of boot camp with. I want to talk about that more on part 2 because we're out of time now. But people know his equipment and his company without even knowing him. In a lot of cases, we have a lot of new members because he does some cool things via social media with our Facebook group. I want him to talk about that. But if you haven't had a chance to meet him, this is one of the guys in our group that is just, and I'm sending people to him for him to be their advisor because of the kind of company that he and